morning student. Today we are going to study about class 7th science chapter reproduction in plants. Student, today we will continue the chapter, okay, reproduction in plants. In our previous video lecture we have studied about female and male reproductive parts of plant, okay. Now today we will study about pollination, its type and agent of the pollination, okay. Now let's start. Student, in sexual reproduction, okay, in sexual reproduction it is necessary and very important to join male gamete with female gamete in order to produce a baby plant, okay, in order to produce a baby plant. But student, you know very well, plant do not move, okay, they remain stand at a same place, okay. How does pollen grain transfer from anther to the stigma, okay, how? For this the process of pollination is very important. So we can define the pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains to the stigma of a flower. This process is known as pollination, okay. Student, pollinations may be two types, cross pollination and self pollination, okay. Two type of pollination, self pollination and cross pollination. First we will study about self pollination. Look at the diagram, student. In this process, in self pollination, the pollen grain, okay, the pollen grain from the anther, okay, the pollen grain from the anther transfer to the stigma of the same flower, transfer of the stigma of the same flower, okay. This process is known as self pollination. Now next, cross pollination. In this process, student, look at the diagram on the blackboard. Student, in this process the pollen grain from the anther of the one flower, okay, the pollen grain from the anther of the one flower transfer to the stigma of the another flower, okay, transfer from the anther to the stigma of the another flower. This process is known as cross pollination, okay student, got it? This process is known as cross pollination. Now student, we will study about agent of pollination, okay, agent of pollination. Now student, we will study about agents of pollination, okay, agents of pollination. Student, the factor that help in the process of pollination, okay, that help in the process of pollination is called agent of pollination, okay. This pollination may be by wind, water and insect. Now we will study about one by one: wind pollination, water pollination and insect pollination. First we will study about wind pollination. Student, wind pollinated plants are generally small, green in color, and they do not have a significant petals, okay, they do not have a significant petals, and the anther of these plants hang outside to the flower, okay, so that wind carry them with along it, okay. The example of wind pollinated plants are cereals and grass, okay. Student, wind pollinated plant do not possess a attractive color and scent and a big petals, okay. Next student, water pollination, okay. In aquatic plant like hydrilla, okay, hydrilla, the pollen grain carried by water to the stigma, okay, water carried by water to the stigma. Student, the anther of these plants burst and release pollen grain into the water, and these pollen grain remain floating, remain floating on the surface of the water and reach to the stigma of the other flower or the same flower. Next student, insect pollination. Student, in insect pollination, flowers petals, okay, the flowers petals are big, attractive in color, and they possess a nectar. So nectar means sweet juice, okay, they possess a nectar and bear a nice smell, okay. Insect get attracted by these things, okay, attracted by these things. When the insect sit on the flower for taking or collect the nectar, okay, the pollen grains, okay, the pollen grains stick on their legs and the body. When the same insect sit on the other flower, okay, sit on the another flower, the pollen grain fall from their body and leg on the other flower, okay. Student, some insect like butterfly, honeybee help in insect pollination, and birds also help in this pollination, okay. Student, the example of insect pollination plant are rose, orchid, etc. Student, thank you and